Okay, on to the boss fights.
The boss
There
fights.
are two boss fights here. Well, technically one of them is an Undead Purgatory, but I'm counting that as Huntsman's Copse. The Executioner's Chariot, I am unabashedly in love with.
It is
This
the
is one of my favorite fights in this game.
it is the best non-DLC fight, I think.
I was going to go so far to say this might actually be might actually be my favorite boss fight in the game.
No. This boss feels like a Metal Gear Solid boss almost, where it has some neat little gimmicks in play, and you can use really interesting tactics to kill this enemy. It doesn't seem like something you should be able to damage before you close the gate on it and do a neat little trick, but you can actually. You can damage the boss.
You can bow it to death.
Yeah, or if you have like Great Resonant Soul or some other overpowered hexes or something, you can use that, and it will fail to jump the cliff, and then you can finish it off, and it falls to its death. That's amazing.
Yes, that is an amazing way to do this fight. This is also probably one of the only fights in this game where I feel like the additional enemies in the arena actually add something to the fight and aren't just kind of there.
I was literally about to say that the use of adds in this fight is awesome. Especially because it utilizes necromancers and skeletons, so you have the boss, you have the necromancers, and you have the enemies that they revive, so you have like 3 tiers of enemies that you have to worry about and think differently about all the time.
And just like the lore behind this fight is awesome too, about how the Executioner has been going around in his chariot for like hundreds and hundreds of years, just repeatedly killing these same skeletons over and over again.
It's also interesting that the boss is not the skeletons in the chariot, but is the actual demon horse, which I think is great.
Yes, it is the demon horse.
Yep. And what a demon horse it is. What a cool design. Very intense the first half of the fight when you're ducking in and out of the alcoves as it runs past you. Very video gamey vibe that we've all done in countless games before. But in this kind of context, it feels really fresh and intense. And there's always those moments where you jump into the alcove just seconds before the horse hits you, and that always feels really good.
And something I didn't know too until I saw it recently, and I feel dumb for not noticing it because it's obvious, is that with precise rolls you can jump over his spurs on the chariot.
That's pretty cool. So if you just want to keep the forward momentum, you don't even have to go into the alcoves.
Yeah, if you just want to keep going,
Yeah.
you can roll over the chariot.
That's pretty amazing. And once again, I think it kind of cites that Metal Gear Solid feel where you can utilize a lot of creative, like almost exploitative elements to defeat an enemy.
See, you say Metal Gear Solid. I would say this is a Demon Souls fight, which is why I like it so much. In that this probably feels the closest to a Demon Souls style boss fight, which Demon Souls had a lot of gimmick bosses, and it had a lot of there were a lot of cheese strategies for the bosses in that game, but that was really fun. Because if you got to a boss that you sucked at, you could cheese it out and win. And this, I feel like, cheesing is good. I love that you can do that. It is an option.
I guess I would prefer it to not be an option, but in this case, I think the general design of this boss is so strong that, in this case, cheesing it is, I think, just jumping over the spurs, like that seems harder and riskier. So I appreciate things like that, where you can take risks that can lead to the boss's quicker demise, like I guess parrying every attack from Gwyn. Bad example because Gwyn's really easy anyway.
The one cool thing that I think would be awesome for Executioner's Chariot is that when you drop the grate down, you fight the horse, part of him, and the horse is the enemy. I think it would have been awesome, in addition to having a way to knock him down a pit, if you could also fight the rider, one-on-one.
That would be pretty cool. Yeah, I guess, though, the boss's name is Executioner's Chariot, as in the chariot belonging to the Executioner.
It is, but I just think that would be a completely awesome, this would go from, like I said, this is in my top 3 boss fights for this game. That would probably take it to maybe one of my favorite fights in the series, period, if that was an option. I don't know, I just think that would be a really cool other dimension to add to it.
I think that it's probably already one of my favorite fights in the series, and I like the fact that there is this almost comedic sense of timing to the introduction of the Executioner on the chariot and the cutscene, and then his almost complete like unimportance in the actual fight, where as soon as you actually get to fight this thing, he is irrelevant. I actually really like that. That the horse, it's kind of like, this is gonna sound stupid, but like the Green Hornet, his sidekick is the one who actually does all the ass kicking. It kind of feels like it's with the horse.
Yeah.
And I really like that about it. So.
And then we'll talk about more of Undead Purgatory, because the only thing left is the multiplayer component of it in a later video.
Yes.
We'll get to that. So, as for the last boss in this area, and the last thing to talk about in this area, we have the Skeleton Lords.
Oh man, this boss sucks.
This boss, I am honestly struggling to really say anything about it. This is... It exists.
Yeah, it's the area is ugly as hell. It's about probably 5 times brighter than it should be. It feels like it was ripped from some kind of like made-up fan-made room from the Tomb of the Giants. It looks and feels completely out of place.
Yeah, this is like a joke room of... The only thing I like about this boss fight is the meta joke of having wheel skeletons as a boss and just continually adding wheel skeletons to make boss fights difficult. Like, that actually is true, but the wheel skeletons here then are actually pathetically easy.
Yeah, they're very easy. And yeah, it's just like I don't mind using more normalish enemies in more creative and clever ways, even in the midst of, using it to create a boss fight. But in this case, the planning and the execution is all wrong, and nothing about the fight stands out.
And nothing about it stands out, and that's sad.
Yeah, you have wheel skeletons in a boss fight, and you don't even remember it.
And it's sad, because conceptually, the idea of a boss where it's 3 powerful enemies that devolve into weaker enemies when you destroy them, like, that's a cool concept, and that's been done in a lot of other games. There's, like, a million Zelda bosses that do that. But it's like, for whatever reason, it just doesn't really work here.
Yeah, I think part of it is that these are called the Skeleton Lords. That seems like it should bear some degree of reverence, respect, or any kind of tension. But the lead up to this fight is just, oh, okay, I guess this cartoonish Gmod Tomb of the Giants room is just hanging out in Huntsman's Copse above ground. Sure, why not? This is the game that makes a fucking running theme of creating the most epic, memorable hallways before boss fights, and yet there was no kind of celebration of these guys at all. I really feel like they were just kind of thrown in the game.
It definitely feels like one of those areas where we needed a boss. Here's a boss.
Yeah.
This is one of those, they had this on the drawing board as a concept, and when they were getting towards the end of production, they were like, we don't really have a true boss for Huntsman's Copse yet. And they went to their list of, these are the bosses we don't have assigned to an area yet. And they put them in there.
Yeah, and I think it kind of speaks volumes about what happened with Huntsman's Copse and Harvest Valley and Earthen Peak. They're all so, well, I guess Huntsman's Copse looks okay, but like there's major problems with all 3 of those areas, and the fact that they're all stitched together I don't think is any coincidence.
Yes, this particular chain of levels, more than any other chain of levels, feels like areas that were all designed independently of each other and then made to be into one sequence.
I think Harvest Valley and Earthen Peak, obviously, they belong together, but I think those should probably just be one level. One bad level, but I mean one level. So we talked about one great boss fight and one terrible boss fight.
Alright, so I think that's all we have for this week. We're gonna do this again next week, and it'll be another thing. So we will see everybody then, hopefully.
Thank you for having me again. I will see you guys later.
Now, I want to make a disclaimer before we talk about this, because I have a pretty strong bias when talking about this DLC. I absolutely love snow levels.